We both know why you're here, and that's to talk about the next Fallout.
I want to start this video by winding back the clock to roughly the time that Fallout 76 had launched. Things were not going well for Bethesda and arguably the industry as a whole. In many people's eyes, Bethesda and Todd Howard had directly become the main villain of the gaming industry. People spoke so angrily about Todd Howard and the studios, you'd thought that Todd had personally slashed their tires or kicked their cat. Many would go as far to say that Bethesda was officially the new EA, which roughly around this time was all in on live service, multiplayer, microtransaction riddled messes.
Is this good for the player? 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 Is this good for the player?
Such as Anthem and the release of Battlefront 2, which, side note, I really think we have to thank this game since I firmly believe it marked the beginning of a turning point for microtransactions in games, but I digress. How is it going, everybody? My name is DeMarco, and today I want to bring some positive discussion to all of you, raising the question whether or not we are officially out of what I would call the dark ages of Bethesda, a time where trust had been completely eroded from Bethesda, where people would make the claim they are no longer going to ever buy a Bethesda game. I would love to see how many people actually followed through with that with Starfield. Probably not very many.
I've got you!
Which is exactly why I want to use this moment to remind you to play the games you want to play and enjoy what you want to enjoy and block out the noise. But just a couple days ago, Redfall received quite a substantial update that provides a lot of improvements to the game. Things like stealth takedowns, for example, modified and improved AI, unique encounters, some mission rebalancing, among many other changes. Although seemingly not enough to turn around the performance of the game even after the update, Redfall's unfortunately struggling to garner more than 70 players at a time on Steam, and it's been that way since July of 2023. It is important to note that's exclusively Steam numbers, so it's not the majority of players I would actually imagine that are experiencing Redfall through Xbox Game Pass, yet it still did serve as one of those, moments of reflection. Let me explain. Redfall is a game I firmly anticipated would honor its commitment to the new characters that were promised in the Bite Back edition of the game, and then move on. That's it. That's the end of Redfall. They would get what the minimum requirements they have to. They would move on to their next project, and I would actually be okay with that. Especially after we heard some reports that Redfall wasn't necessarily a game that Arcane wanted to make. It was supposed to be a live service title, that portion of the game got gutted. We've seen what the end result is. It unfortunately was not what it could have been. But the update that was provided in the post-launch support surprised me in a pretty positive way, and it made me reflect and think about the current status of Bethesda Softworks, of Bethesda as a whole, and where they're headed. And it's pretty positive. Winding back the clocks a bit, you think around 2016 to 2017, gamers were reaching an absolute breaking point as far as monetization in games go. That's not to say we weren't already frustrated, but something had to give somewhere. Even the WB published Shadow of War, a single-player predominant game, was able to weasel in microtransactions to the multiplayer component where you had to buy orcs to protect your keep from other players. It's as nonsensical as it sounds.
Actually, buy some of these loot chests that you guys can get. So we'll start with the silver loot chests. Now you guys can see that it costs 5 million.
If it wasn't microtransactions, it was titles like Mass Effect Andromeda, where the game just released completely unpolished, which is still an issue today, but I like to think, especially with how great gaming has been in 2023, that it's gotten quite a bit better, at least for now. And of course, not every single game in, for example, 2017 was absolutely terrible. It wasn't this horrible year where nothing went right. You had some stellar releases, Wolfenstein 2, Resident Evil 7, Horizon Zero Dawn released that year, many great games. However, it always felt as though there were the negative headlines that were dominating most of the year. At least that's a large portion of my memory of it. On the sidelines of all this nonsense, you had cute little Bethesda. They were making their RPG. Sure, they stumbled and tripped a little bit with Fallout 4 for a lot of people, but they were still doing right. Their next game would come out strong. They learned from some of the mistakes that they made, and they were free from all of this jargon and nonsense. And Bethesda was what other studios should strive to be, and in the future, they'd continue to remain as such. And boy, were we wrong for the next several years. In June of 2017, Bethesda introduces the Creation Club, which, mind you, was ZeniMax's second attempt at a paid mods marketplace. Many might not remember that at the time, Bethesda was trying to integrate a paid marketplace with Valve and Steam, and they ended up backtracking on that one. I do want to point out that I don't actually think the Creation Club was really that bad. I do think that the prices could be better and the content more substantial for what should be there, but ultimately what annoyed, a big part of it was the timing when this released, amongst a lot of other things going on at the time, just wasn't the best look for Bethesda. You had mobile releases like Elder Scrolls Blades, which felt more or less impossible to play unless you engaged with their microtransaction system. In 2019, Wolfenstein Youngblood from Machine Games, who had two phenomenal previous titles rebooting the Wolfenstein franchise, and now a microtransaction-filled co-op title. And of course, a slap in the face for most gamers was undoubtedly Fallout 76.
Could you not be yourself for 5 minutes?
The story of 76 has been done to death, so we really don't need to go too deep here, but naturally it had a rough start. To throw some dirt on that wound, there were a lot of external factors at play here. Little things like the nylon bag.
But what was actually included in the final package is a far shabbier and far cheaper bag made out of thin nylon rather than the advertised canvas one.
Fallout First, a premium subscription for Fallout 76, releasing while the game still wasn't entirely fixed.
You what, mate? No way! Bethesda has literally lost their minds! There's no way! $100!
Or just simply the idea that Fallout 76 pre-orders actually went live before we knew what the game was, before we knew that it was a multiplayer-only title, and this was the justification that Jason Schreier gave for leaking information about 76 ahead of the 2018 full reveal. What made it subtly more frustrating was that nobody knew where this new mentality was coming from. Was ZeniMax just getting greedy, possibly even desperate? You had titles like Prey, The Evil Within 2, Dishonored 2 that didn't seem to meet sales expectations that had been set. Perhaps ZeniMax thought, well, everybody else is doing it. Live service is the future of games. We could really revitalize some of our franchises if we do some of that. Others thought that maybe it had something to do with the third-party Providence Equity Company and a private investment firm that had been buying more and more of a stake, more and more ownership over ZeniMax, and now it was them who were really calling the shots. People who were financially savvy first and gamers maybe never.
In 2007, where they invested $300 million for roughly 25% of ZeniMax, that of course being a massive portion of the company and valuing them at about $1.2 billion. But then again, in 2010, they invested $150 million. This time around, we don't actually know how much for. But where this all really starts to matter, and again, this was discovered by Luke Stevens, is in 2016. There were some talks internally as to what they wanted to do with ZeniMax. Two of the potential options on the table being an IPO of the company or potential sale of their stake of the company, or potentially the company overall. 2016 being that year where we really established the turning point for Bethesda, and I think this is the key as to why we're seeing this transition with the company.
Either way, Bethesda had erupted into this tyrant, this villain of the gaming industry, a fallen hero at best to others, but how was it possible that this industry titan, the one who led and set industry standards for other companies, had fallen to chasing monetization trends of other studios that weren't able to pull it off themselves at that?
Anthem has got to be one of the biggest disappointments in modern gaming.
It is difficult for a game to be truly uninteresting. It requires an unlikely convergence of events to perfectly thread the needle between good and terrible to create the unremarkable, something functional but also joyless and flat. Babylon's Fall is one such convergence.
It's time to find out what happened with Marvel's Avengers.
It hurts even more when you realize titles like Dishonored 2, if part of the reason for this shift was due to the lackluster financial success, a game like Dishonored 2, for example, released right alongside juggernauts like the latest Battlefield and Call of Duty titles with insane marketing budgets. Wolfenstein 2 released on the exact same day as Assassin's Creed Origins, which was the first Assassin's Creed title to really shake up the formula from any past entry in the series, which had fans very excited for, and right alongside it, the same day, Wolfenstein 2. Was the unfair release date and placement and timing of these titles part of what contributed to the live service road that Bethesda was walking down? Players and gamers felt abandoned and betrayed. Now, as we wrap up 2023 and look ahead towards 2024, based on what we've been seeing from Bethesda recently, I am more confident than I have been in a long time as to the direction I believe Bethesda is headed. I think the worst may be over.
It's done. Yes, Mr. Frodo. It's over now.
Rather than abandoning Fallout 76 outright, slowly but surely, Bethesda Game Studios Austin turned Fallout 76 into what is now a pretty decent Fallout game, even if it still is not for everyone. There were many points where even the dedicated Fallout 76 community were accepting to some degree of the fact that whatever update came next might be the last before Bethesda pulled the plug on it.
And I hate to even go here and think about Fallout 76 stopping because I'm not giving up on it yet. I hope they're just working on Starfield.
Yet here we are years later with a brand new, pretty substantial content update soon down the road. Tango Gameworks, traditionally known for horror games, shadow dropped Hi-Fi Rush, a comedy action rhythm title, which turned out to be not only the obvious total departure from anything Tango has done in the past, but it was a phenomenal release and turned out to be one of my favorite games of the year. Starfield, after multiple delays, released as one of the most polished Bethesda games to date and is getting pretty positive post-launch support alongside its planned DLC. For example, we recently received 2 smaller updates for Starfield, one of which I covered in a previous video, but the latest added the promised FOV slider to the game. Now, not talking about whether or not it should have been there at launch or shouldn't have been there at launch, but it is good that these updates are coming at a seemingly consistent and pretty quick rate, and I'm okay with these smaller micro updates that are being released if it means that we get some of the promised features sooner rather than waiting for one singular massive built-out patch, at which point many players might have moved on from Starfield to other games. Adding to the brighter future ahead, although there's still much mystery surrounding it, Bethesda is working alongside Lucasfilm to make an original title set in the Indiana Jones universe. I'm not excited solely as an Indiana Jones fan, but it's an exciting time when Machine Games, who I personally feel is massively underrated for their storytelling prowess, is getting to work with such a massive IP, and hopefully this opens the door to more such collaborations in the future. Even further ahead, excitingly, we may be able to finally see official remasters of Oblivion or remakes of Oblivion and Fallout 3, which fans have been asking for many years now. Elder Scrolls Castles, a mobile game, just sort of appeared out of nowhere and is pretty solid take on Fallout Shelter, set in the Elder Scrolls universe, where you have to manage your keep, make decisions, keep your citizens happy. It's pretty fun, and I was able to do all of the content in the game, even get the premium pass that's there, like a battle pass system, without spending a single dime. And Redfall, after months of complete and utter silence, I flat out thought that Arcane was moving on from that game, but behind the scenes, they just released their latest pretty substantial patch to try to turn around some of what Redfall released as in order to make it the game that it should have been, like the post-launch for Fallout 76 that turned that into a good game, like ESO before that really turned the MMO around. Do I think Redfall will ever reach the heights of what it could have been? Personally, no, which is unfortunate. However, I'm honestly happy to see that it's still getting continued support, not just the absolute bare minimum. I think that's a good thing. In 2023, is Bethesda absolutely perfect? No. There's still things like, for example, Mighty Doom, which was by Alpha Dog Games. Bethesda purchased them in 2019, and it had a difficulty curve so unbelievably steep that I think by about stage 4 or 5, it was borderline impossible, just simply not fun. And of course, Mighty Doom had all of the microtransaction systems in one single game that have ever been made to date.
New Slayer skins and weapon skins, using either crystals or real money directly depending on the item. You can even spend crystals to revive your Slayer once mid-run, and to get even better gear as you play, you can purchase a battle pass for $6.99.
We're still yet to see how Creation Club might be implemented into Starfield. I'm fully expecting that it will appear sometime after the Creation Kit is released, but we're yet to see as to whether or not it will be done in a more consumer-friendly manner, if the prices will be a little bit fairer, if the content will be more substantial than what was offered for Fallout 4 and Skyrim. And then of course you still have things like Fallout 76 and the mod support that was supposed to come. Is that still a thing anymore? I honestly don't know. I am incredibly optimistic for the future of Bethesda Softworks published titles and Bethesda Game Studios directly. They seemingly are free of many of the burdens that were steering them in a wrong direction in the past few years, and especially when it comes to, for example, The Elder Scrolls 6, which is my personal favorite franchise. I know a lot of people were disappointed with the way that Starfield launched, or disappointed with some of the decisions that were made there, and it's my hope that even if you didn't like Starfield, which is completely fine, Elder Scrolls 6, between the time that the developers have spent away from that franchise, which could bring some new reinvigorated passion and ideas to it, on top of some of the new technology that they have available, with some of the knowledge and learnings that they get from Starfield based on player feedback, Elder Scrolls 6 can be a truly phenomenal game. So let me know your thoughts. Do you think that Bethesda has more or less turned a new leaf, that we're going to reach a renaissance, if you will? The renaissance comes after the plague for Bethesda. Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. I look forward to hearing what you have to say, and thank you all so much for watching. I hope to see you all next time. So long, everybody.